Welcome to Health System CIO's interview with Dr. Deepti Pandita, CMIO and VP of Clinical Informatics with UCI Health. I'm Anthony Guerra, founder and editor-in-chief. Dr. Pandita, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, great. If you want to start off by telling me a little bit about your organization and your role.
Yeah. So I am the Vice President for Clinical Informatics and the Chief Medical Information Officer at the University of California, Irvine. We are an academic institution. We are a 6-hospital system, multiple ambulatory centers, multiple EDs, and we also have a very robust GME program with residents and fellows, as well as a medical education program. So we have a medical school affiliated with us.
All right, very good. So today we're going to talk about AI, a fun topic, but I do sort of have certain things I want to focus in on. A couple of segments that I think people are really looking at right now. So it feels like we've gotten beyond the, we need to do AI, we should be doing AI. Ambient listening's kind of been proven out, I think, as far as being effective and useful and making clinicians happy. Um, but I think people are having challenges around sort of 3 areas that I'd like to go into. One would be sort of selecting the right projects to try and to experiment with, and that's a lot of governance can come into play there. Um, then it would be sort of once you've made a selection, how do you move forward with certain pilots and different ways you can implement things. And then there's the idea of measuring, truly measuring what we've tried, and then seeing if we want to sort of expand or if we need to go back to the drawing board and shelve that attempt, which is okay, right? That's going to happen from time to time. So let's start off at the beginning and that idea of selecting the right projects and governance. Just tell me your thoughts there and sort of where you are.
Yeah, that's actually a very crucial point in the whole AI journey. So when I think of AI, or any mature organization should think of AI, they should not think of it as a standalone project by itself. AI should be embedded into whatever your strategic projects are or whatever problems are being solved at the health system level. So as an example, if your problem is staffing, or if your problem is length of stay, or if your problem is ED overcrowding, and you have strategic plans around solving for these, then you should embed AI as a solution for existing problems, existing strategic plans, and see if you can leverage AI to either augment what you're doing with your strategic plans or replace the current plan with an AI-driven plan.
Mm.
And that's how AI should fit in. And with that comes in governance. So, most, health systems have standard operating plans and then outcomes and KPIs. And the same things should apply to any AI-driven solution as well. AI governance is very important. So it should be a multi-stakeholder group that is not just, operational leaders or IT leaders. It should have sort of the other components which people often have not paid much attention to, which is the end user. You have to keep them in the loop, because if they don't understand AI, they're not going to be good stewards of your system or even be able to advocate for it. 2 is ethicists, because AI still is an evolving sort of science, and we need to make sure that it's free of bias, it's transparent. So ethicists are important. And then data scientists. You cannot have any AI project without due diligence to the data that the AI is being studied on, developed on, implemented. So you do need to keep your data scientists in the loop.
Yeah, that's great. I've talked to different people about this, and there seems to be this tension or this difficulty they're working to find the right balance of AI in some senses having a separate sort of a separate mechanism or a separate governance that somehow dovetails into the existing governance. And most people are, I'm hearing, we don't want separate, but then as they tell you about what they're doing, there's a little bit of separate, it dovetails in. So it's sort of complex and nuanced how you go about this. Any more thoughts there?
Yeah, so it is separate in certain ways because when you think of any technology solution, there is always, the implementation, there are KPIs, and then there is lifecycle management, there is, advances in the technology, you do upgrades, things like that. So that's very typical of a software sort of,
Mm-hmm.
solution. With AI, the lifecycle management looks very different. And that's why the struggle or the conflict comes in as to does it fit into our current governance or does it need its own standalone? So I think of it as the intake is very similar. You're looking for a solution for a problem at your organization. So at that point, there should not be any differentiation. But in terms of management of the life cycle of that product that you have, you will have some different approaches. So that is where the bifurcation happens. A tech lifecycle management is different from an AI solution lifecycle management. And that's where the governance might be a little different. But nonetheless, the operational governance should be the same. It is for a solution for a problem you're trying to solve. Everything else should happen in the background.
Very good. Yeah, one of the interesting dynamics here when we talk about doing AI, and sort of taking AI on is a lot of times, most of the time, perhaps it's coming through the vendors, right? We have existing vendors, and maybe through through an upgrade, a software upgrade, they've injected AI into the application. Now you have AI, and you kind of need to know that, from what I understand, because an application with AI is different than an application without AI in terms of maybe data security and privacy, and so there has to be good communication from the vendors. So sometimes we're just doing AI because the vendors brought it in, our existing vendors. We didn't buy anything new, but now we have AI, and maybe now we need that software to go through these different governance mechanisms and reviews, right? So it changes how we're looking at the software because the vendor injected it in.
Yes, and that is actually more and more coming to fruition on a daily basis because most vendors are injecting AI into their solutions. But this is where your procurement team members become your best friends because you have to, number one, educate them that, anytime you are redoing a contract or you have a statement of work or a data user agreement, you have to kind of cross the T's and dot the I's in terms of the lens of AI.
Hmm.
So what we have done is our procurement has a standard form for any vendor that mentions the word AI in it. And that form needs to be completed in addition to everything else that the vendor is asking for. The problem comes in if the vendor injects the AI without it being transparent, which does happen sometimes.
Mm.
So you have a vendor in your system and now suddenly they have an AI companion or something, which doesn't require a full-on recontracting or, upping your, SOWs or anything like that. That becomes a little tricky. That requires a very sort of astute either on the IT side or a procurement side, person to pick up on that and say,
Hmm.
start questioning as to, oh, why did this happen? Or suddenly I've noticed this. And that's when you question and counter question the vendor, how did you do this without our knowledge? And then you go back to the governance process and say, we need to now vet it through our governance and please answer these questions.
So it creates a very interesting dynamic with the vendors where they, in order to satisfy, they want to give their customers the best tools possible. So they have an incentive to inject AI to make their products better into them. And they also have an incentive to market that, and perhaps they increase their prices based on the product getting better, but they don't want to create a big noise around it because they don't want it to get caught up in some sort of new governance mechanisms that may kick it back in a sense or give them extra work to do.
Yes and no, because again, if you have educated your, not only the leadership, but your end users at large,
Hmm.
and there is awareness and this governance process is pretty much, part of your culture,
Mm-hmm.
then that is the way to circumvent those circumstances,
Okay.
Now, it takes time. It's not second nature to any healthcare system's culture to have this,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, um, because everything around AI is very new right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think eventually, with repeated educational pushes and awareness, this will become sort of routine.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, think of the time when first, software as a service came around. It was a very new concept because,
Mm-hmm.
people, it was not second nature to people. Or when cloud, based solutions came around, everyone was very leery. And until we reached a point where if they did not have a cloud-based solution,
Right.
we're not even talking to those vendors.
Yeah, it's you wonder if it's different this time around because of how people talk about AI.
Yeah.
And they talk about it as if this isn't just the next iteration or the next thing. This is different.
Yeah.
And I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it is different. It is different. But then, a lot of things in tech have come along that have been different.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, the perfect example would be even when cognitive computing came around and we had algorithms on clinical decision supports that were based on, machine learning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was very different. And we had this whole man versus machine debate at that time till, we vetted those, we studied those, and we said, oh yeah, they are accurate, 99% of the time or 95% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, these things take time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of hype, then there's a lot of angst, and then it becomes like, okay, these are the use cases that are sort of, table stakes now in
Right.
healthcare, and that's when it becomes routine.
You mentioned the dynamic of addressing the problem. Like you have certain problems, you're working certain problems as a health system based on your strategic plan, and you know there's things you want to improve. And you mentioned the idea of that's where you want to figure out how to leverage AI, right? You want to say, here are the problems you're working. This is a great new tool. Let's see if this tool works on this problem. It may and it may not. And the other thing we talk about is there's different types of AI. There's the machine learning, there's the technology, the AI that's detecting anomalies in images, which is different than sort of the chat GPT kind of AI. These are, different things. The machine learning is sort of much more tried and true and kind of really works. Not that the other stuff doesn't work. Um, but tell me your thoughts on that idea, that dynamic of intentionally, we've got this tool now, and intentionally looking at our problems and seeing where that might match up. Are those people that really know the AI tool, or they're people, or are they the people that really know the operational issue? What you need is someone who knows both, right? That's where
Yeah.
the magic happens.
Yes, and that is rare. It is not common to have that, although this is where you have to look in your organization and know your allies, and
Mm-hmm.
recognize who are the people who are early adopters of this kind of technology. And I mean, again, I look at my job. My job is to educate and create awareness and a sense of diligence around what AI solutions can do for operational efficiency, as an
Mm-hmm.
example. And once I create that, then it's up to that leader to sort of seek out other like-minded leaders to say, hey, Dr. Pandita is suggesting we use AI for this use case. Let's do a pilot. What is the harm? And this is where being in an academic organization actually comes to our advantage because we are research minded,
Mm-hmm.
and we are also innovation minded. So we are not afraid to take those risks, knowing fully well that the pilot might fail,
Mm-hmm.
but at least we tried, and then we can iterate and look to the next use case.
Well, you've sequenced that perfectly to sort of the next phase of the discussion, which would be the idea of let's say the governance has selected an AI tool of some sort to address some of the strategic problems that they've been working. And so far, everything is going down the path you described as being how it should be done. And now it's time to give it a shot. where we talk about pilots and things like that. What are your thoughts on getting that right? Because like everything else, there's a way to get it wrong, and to have a pilot fail, not because the technology didn't work or isn't proper for the problem, but because we did the pilot wrong.
Yeah. And that happens. I mean, it's not unheard of.
Yeah.
This is where having a multi-stakeholder engaged team is important. If you're looking at the problem just from your leadership lens, oh, I need to reduce length of stay, as an example, it's whatever solution you're thinking from your leadership lens may not actually be feasible from the actual worker who is, responsible for the throughput of that patient from admission to discharge. And there may be things that are, workflow related or personnel related, which CAI will not be able to solve. Or they may be real, geographic or other barriers. So again, having that multi-stakeholder group is very important when you are developing the solution and also piloting the solution. Are you piloting the solution in the area that it is most feasible for, and that you will have assessed if you had those right people at the table when you were developing the solution. And so that makes it less likely to fail then if
Mm-hmm.
your end user is engaged from the get-go.
Yeah, so you need that combination or that mix in terms of the people involved in this governance process, and you need not only the executives like yourself, but as you mentioned, the frontline worker. Um, but I don't know how many of them you need, and I don't know if they need to be involved every step of the way. But certainly, you don't want to get, and this is probably why a lot of things fail when they do. It's that frontline worker wasn't involved right up until they were handed the tool and told, here's what you
Exactly.
use now,
Yeah.
and they say, well, this doesn't work for me, right? So you get them at the beginning, and just tell me, I just need to understand better
Yeah.
that concept
So
of getting that frontline worker involved in this early.
So you get them in the beginning and you say, hey, you get them excited about what you're thinking. So that is number one. And once you get them excited, you say, okay, who in this group, say it's ED nurses as an
Mm-hmm.
example,
Mm-hmm.
who in your group thinks that AI can help, or what do you know about AI? And there is always that one person who is, more enthusiastic or eager to learn. And then you engage that person to be the spokesperson for that end user. And then as you're going through the design process, you have to still keep that end user engaged. It's not that you get their feedback and then you drop them off and then you engage them again when you're implementing. You have to keep them engaged through the design process. I'm a big fan of user-centered design
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't do that, things will fall apart. And then when you're implementing, you again make them the change agents for that implementation. Because if you're not doing that, their peers are not going to, engage with the product. Or if a leader is telling them, oh, now you need to use this, it is less likely to get leverage compared to a peer telling them to use it.
Mm-hmm. And you think this is usually a volunteer type situation where someone like yourself or an executive goes to the unit and says, we're trying to help you out. We know you have these issues. Here's things we're looking at. Does anybody want to help out and be on this committee? You're going to meet. We're going to look at tools. You're going to try them out and give us feedback. And it'll be volunteer, and you'll do it once every 2 weeks. Like that kind of detail there?
Typically, yes, it is volunteer type, unless it comes to a point where now a pilot in a small area is successful and now you want to roll it out system wide. And this person has been your sort of brand ambassador for this, then you may figure out a way to carve out some FTE for this person to do this job. So, but typically for a use case that is small in a pilot format, most participants are voluntary.
Right. I do remember over at Seattle Children's, Dr. Chowdhury, they had a program where they pay people,
Mhm.
users, to be on these committees, and he said, that was quite effective, um, because you are asking people for their time, and
Yes.
you probably max out in terms of what you can get on a volunteer basis, and you need more right? You need
Yes.
more perhaps than you can get on a volunteer basis. So it's worth the money, as they say.
It is, but you have to also, create the ROI to show it's worth the
Mm-hmm.
money.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it may not be worth the money when you're on paper, when you're creating the format, but
Mm-hmm.
eventually, if you create it in the right way and you have KPIs and you show the ROI, you will be able to pay that person.
Right. Um, figuring out when you're doing a pilot, establishing an understanding of what success looks like is important, right? And I was talking to someone the other day, and they referenced the idea of, if you have a situation with a health system and a startup, it's very important for both sides to have a common understanding of what success is. Otherwise, we get to an evaluation point and they think you're happy and you're not happy because you didn't at the beginning say what happiness was determined by.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. You have to have shared goals, especially
Hmm.
if you're using a vendor on the outside. And more than that, having the shared goal is the fact that does the vendor understand your system? If the vendor has been successful at another system, which was, as an example, a private health system for profit, and it was all, clinicians who were, just, independent, but, working at that health system versus ours, where we have employed academic people who are not full-time researchers and others. They have to have a very good understanding of the workforce in order to develop those shared goals, because they may come from a mindset, oh, we implemented it successfully at this other organization and didn't face the burdens, so the problem is with you,
Mm.
there must be something wrong with you, and that's why you
Right.
have the burdens. So if they don't understand your system or the landscape of different kinds of healthcare system in the country, you will never come to a shared understanding.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, the health system environments can be very different and extremely complex,
Yes.
right? And
And there are state and geographic variations in this.
yeah.
There are some vendors who may be very successful on the East Coast, but they don't know that California has very unique AI regulations and
Uh,
may not be cognizant of that. So again, and that becomes a barrier. So, when a vendor who comes very well armed with an understanding of your health system is the most welcome vendor.
oh, very good. What about this idea of a pilot getting to the point where either going to expand or we're done. We're finished here. This didn't work out. Any thoughts on that moment of truth, so to speak?
Yeah, it happens more often than you think. So, you've done the pilot and your mindset, you have all the right data points, you have a very well thought out algorithm, and then you do the pilot and then you realize, oh, it's not capturing the data well because we missed this one point where the data refresh happens at midnight, but we are looking at the data at 6 a.m. So of course it's going to be wrong. There is always that one thing that goes wrong. So now you adjust for that, but then you realize, oh, but the EMR refreshes only at 12:01, so you cannot actually capture that data point as accurately as you wanted.
uh,
So, and that is the crucial data point in terms of predicting discharge date. So then you abandon the pilot and you say, oh, this has to be done manually because there is no other way to capture it. So I'm just giving that as an
yeah.
example, but these things do happen.
And so then, as you said, at that point, I guess you might have the option to extend the pilot if you say, all right, we didn't capture the data we needed, but I understand why, and now we can do it. So
Yeah.
we're gonna extend this pilot. Or if you get the data, you look at it, and then you make the decision of, yeah, this is something we want to continue, we want to expand, or we're finished.
Yeah, you have to make a go no go
Right,
decision, or you have to make a decision that, okay, will I have better gains if I extend,
right,
but add or tweak these 2 or 3 data points?
right.
And but you have to always put time limits to these things. You cannot have these things go on forever, and keep tweaking. At some point, you have to say, I have spent 12 to 18 months on this with, minor tweaks here and there, and yet have not gotten to the KPIs I want. It's time to just abandon this project.
Well, that's such an interesting point. And then, there's the expression throwing good money after bad. But I would imagine you have to be so disciplined because it's your pilot. I mean, and if you feel connected to it, if you championed it, if you were really excited about it and you want it to work and you put in 18 months, you spent a lot of money, there's that temptation to, oh, just a little bit longer, just a little bit longer, as you said, but you have to be disciplined and say, nope, I'm out.
Yeah, and that's where you have to, sort of ground yourself in basic project management rules, which is every project has a start and an end date. And you cannot let scope creep drive the project. You have to stay grounded in whatever you set as the scope from get-go.
And it's got to be even harder when you're dealing with a vendor because let's say a startup or you're dealing with people that have maybe put their heart and soul into this and they've got a lot riding it. It could be a lot of, emotions and you're telling them, we're done. And that's tough. That's not
Yeah,
easy. You got to be
yep.
tough.
Sometimes you have to do tough love
Yeah.
for these things.
Oh, it's great. Tough love. So, yeah, so so we got that idea of measuring, and that's sort of the data points you were talking about, this idea of measuring the effectiveness of did we get what we wanted. What about this idea of soft ROI versus hard ROI? I mean, I don't know how much you could take soft ROI into account, or that's just a question of sort of um, we know it reduced quote unquote pajama time. And when we do that, we assume we're going to reduce burnout, and it's really expensive to replace a physician. So you make like a few mental leaps to get your ROI. I guess that's part of it.
Yes and no. So again, it depends on who you are, sort of selling or making the business case to.
Hmm.
So for your financial leaders, it's always hard ROI. I mean, no amount of arguments on the soft ROI will, sort of make the case for you. However, this is when you need build your allies. So if you have clinical leaders who are buying into the wellness burnout, sort of paradigm, and you make the use case in terms of a soft ROI, then it's up to them to convince the financial leaders to say that the soft ROI far outweighs the hard ROI. And, that's why we need the product. So I think it all depends on who your audience is.
Well, that's brilliant, and I think that that's worth exploring a little bit. I mean, that's the reality of any business, and the reality of healthcare is that there are very influential clinicians in a health system who everybody wants to make happy, right? They bring in a lot of money. They're world renowned, perhaps. They're tops in their field. They're why you exist.
Mhm.
And we'll call them super users, whatever you want to call them. So, as you mentioned, if your Dr. Super user really loves this technology that you provided to him or her, loves it, says this is great, and you're having an argument with the CFO who says there's no ROI here, we're killing it, you might want to say, hey, Dr. Super User, why don't you go have a talk with the CFO? Because that may change everything in 2 minutes.
Oh, I have done that. I have done that, and I'll tell you, it usually works. So, you know, this is my mantra, and I tell my team this all the time. The meeting before the meeting is the most important meeting. So you really have to build your allies. When you know that you don't have the hard ROI, locked down, you have to latch on to your allies to make the case for the soft ROI.
That's brilliant. I mean, I absolutely love that. We're talking truths today, and you're
Oh
going to
yeah,
be
yeah. I
this is
mean that's
very helpful to your colleagues because this is
oh
the
yes,
reality they live in.
yes,
You know,
absolutely.
you're not going to fix it with a spreadsheet sometimes. You fix it with having someone talk to someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Dr. Pandita, we're just about out of time today. Let me just give you a final question, kind of open-ended. Um, Number one is, do you kind of think we've hit the main sort of current, at the moment, issues that people are dealing with around AI? Do you think we've hit them? Haven't missed anything important? If so, let me know.
No, I think, we are in general, for as far as AI is concerned in healthcare, I think we are, you know, we have sort of plateaued now. We have done the hype cycle and are on that plateau now. We are not quite in the trough of disillusionment yet. but we are riding the plateau. So I think the use cases have just need to mature.
Yeah.
And whatever use cases we have today will just evolve and have sort of branching use cases from
Yeah.
the current use cases
Right.
rather than having net new use cases.
Yeah. Excellent. Dr. Pandita, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Always enjoy speaking to you, and I hope I can catch up with you again down the road. So thank you
Thank you,
so much for
Anthony.
your time today.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye
great
now.
day. Bye.